Well, hi there. Yeah, I just came across these clips as I was going through my files looking for other stuff. I recorded these last year and meant to put them together into something like this. I can't figure out how to do voiceover on the and time it correctly on the Windows Movie Maker software I was using, so I just did the titles, which is probably more irritating than the voiceover, but I think it got the job done. This is for like David Butler and Glenn Dede and whoever else is asking me about corrugated irrigation, and I wanted to show Jennifer in the Philippines also. So I'll pick up where I left off because I was talking about counting corrugates. Well, what I do after I set the fields, which each field can take between a half an hour and 2 hours to set, then I go and walk across the bottom of the field, and there might be anywhere from, say, 50 to 180 corrugates that I've set on a field. And later in the afternoon, after the water's had time to get down to the entire length of the corrugate, I walk the bottom of the field with, I come up with my own system. Everybody has a system. I print these out on a Word document, these numbers, and if I have over 100 corrugates, if you see below the fold, I go to 100, that 1 becomes 101, 102, etc. And I mark it with a pen as I go down, and I have my own marking system. So if I circle a number, that means the water hasn't made it through to the end of the field yet on that corrugate. As an example here, I've circled some numbers, and that would mean I would have to make that water flow faster through the tube. When I do that by taking my shovel, and as I walk, I walk the bottom, and then I walk the top. You walk across the bottom of the field, and then you walk across the top. The top is where the concrete ditch is. Well, okay, I've circled the ones that don't have any water going through them. Some, the water may be traveling too fast, and therefore you have a lot of erosion and runoff, and we don't want that. So I usually put a minus sign under that number, meaning I want to cut the amount of water down that goes to that particular corrugate. All right. Then there's some that are running kind of slow, and if infiltration into the field increases, then they'll stop flowing because the water would soak into the corrugate further up toward the top of the field eventually sometimes. So I'll put a plus sign on some of those corrugates which have done that. So if I have a plus sign under a corrugate which is running too slow, that means I want to make it run faster. This is my basic system. I have other marks I use for other things, but this is the basic system. And then I make a little bracket like this one. You see after the number 74 I put a bracket. That means there are 74 corrugates in this set. Okay, so I've got circled numbers, which means they're bone dry. The water hasn't gotten down there. The water needs to go faster in those corrugates. The plus signs means the water needs to go a little faster in those corrugates because it's running too slow. It's made it to the end, but it's running too slow, and it might start backing up, as we call it, and then the water no longer makes it to the bottom because it's soaking into the corrugate further up. The minus sign means that corrugate's running too fast, and I need to slow the water down because it's just causing erosion. The water in those corrugates possibly looks muddy. We're pushing dirt is what we call it. We have something called polyacrylamide, also shortened to the term PAM, which we use to increase infiltration and stop runoff also. And we put this, it's a granular, and I put that in quite a few of the fields. We have an applicator which can be used fairly quickly, just walking across the corrugates at the top of the field. So then I walk across the top of the field, knowing where corrugate number 1 is on the top of the field that corresponds to corrugate number 1 that I found at the bottom of the field. And as I walk across, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm not going to do anything to them because they were flowing at a good rate. When I get to 5, which wasn't flowing at a good rate. I increased the amount of water that goes down there by taking my shovel and quickly knocking the tube further down, because this is a gravity irrigation system. If I knock the tube further down, it's, as you saw when I was setting the tubes, they kind of rest on the dirt next to the concrete tube. Well, I tap it down a little bit so that more water flows out of it. Then I walk quickly across. I mean, it only takes me a couple minutes to walk across the 74 corrugates here, and I walk across 6, 7, 8. When I get to 9, it needs to run faster. I kick that down also. And then I do all of the, when I get up to 17, that needs to run slower. I've got a minus sign. That means I want less water to flow out of that one. So I tap the tube up closer to the ditch so that it's not as far down. And like I said, I quickly do this, boom, boom, boom. It's practically unconscious at this point that I do it. And then I move on to the next field. So that's just a quick rundown on how gravity irrigation works, because I know especially, I think David Butler's asked me about it a couple times, and I think Jennifer would be curious about what I do. And I think Lenditi might have said something. And if there's anybody else, then, you know, I'm going to post this on YouTube, and people can look at it, or I can point them to that when they ask questions about gravity irrigation. There's a couple advantages to gravity irrigation. I like it. I think it gives you a more even irrigation. When you use sprinklers, if you've got wind, forget it a lot of times. It's you're not going to irrigate evenly. And I think I really like gravity irrigation. We have over 20 fields that we irrigate this way. In my section of about 400 acres. We also have a pivot and some gravity irrigation with gated pipes, which means you've just got, instead of the concrete ditch, you've got a pipe with these gates that you open and close, and they give water to the corrugates. So that's it. That's my little tutorial video on gravity irrigation using my little free software Windows Movie Maker that we all get with Windows. And if I ever figure out how to do voiceover, maybe I'll redo it. But for now, this is the end, and see you on the Sabbath, people. Well, and those of you who aren't Adventists, I'll see you around.